Welcome to Talk Design Podcast, the space where creativity meets conversation. I'm Adrian Ramsey, your host, and as someone deeply entrenched in the world of design, I'm thrilled to introduce you to the minds that inspire me in the hope that they will spark something special within you too. From a design past crafting women's swimwear to pushing the boundaries of performance sportswear, from mountaineering to international yachting, to implementing systematic innovation solutions that transcend boundaries in aerospace industry. My heart remains rooted in architecture, and exploring the emotional tapestry woven by built spaces is my fascination. My journey in design has been what can only be described as a life of design. I want to thank you for lending me your ears. I'm eager to embark on this next episode together. And for those of you who prefer to watch and listen, you can catch this episode at YouTube. That's youtube.com/@Talk Design Podcast. My guest on Talk Design today is Mike Roberts, and he's from Granbury, Texas. And now Mike is the host of the Converse Cowboy podcast. He's also a real estate investor, and I've been listening to his podcast, found some wonderful guests that he's had, really enjoyed the conversations that he creates. More than that, I discovered Mike through his Instagram, which is the Converse Cowboy, where he posts really regularly these, I was going to say sayings, they're not really sayings, they gems of life, like little pieces that just give you perspective on how maybe you're living your life or how you could live your life. So Mike, welcome to the show.
Thank you, my friend. Thank you for having me.
Hey, my pleasure. Absolutely. So as I said, it started out with this whole little thing where I discovered Instagram's algorithm discovered me, and it put me in front of your stuff. And I'm looking and I'm going, this has always got something that I have to stop and think a little deeper about. It's not a scroll past. It's okay. How does that relate? So I've really enjoyed that. And I'm guessing a lot of other people do as well.
Right, man. Thank you for the kind words.
Well deserved, trust me. Mike, I would love you to start off by just telling us a bit about you, your background, where you came from, where you are now, just a bit about your life, and so people get a bit of context. And then we'll get into, the other parts of what makes you who you are now.
Right on. Perfect. Yeah. So I'll try to give you the 30-second elevator pitch of who I am. Grew up in a small town, West Monroe, Louisiana. Hated school. Grew up playing baseball all the way through college. And that was all I knew, and all I ever thought I would do is go play professional baseball. But I was always, I wouldn't say I was a rule breaker, but I was always just curious and just questioned authorities and questioned a lot of things. And I think that's what led me to where I am today, just kind of questioning the status quo of go to school, get a job, get married, buy a big house, and that equals success. And fortunately or unfortunately, however you want to look at it, I checked all of those boxes and found myself very unhappy and very unsatisfied. And so since went on this soul searching journey, and the Converse Cowboy platform has allowed me to, further, have conversations with people that I probably wouldn't have had a chance to sit down with, to kind of satiate my own curiosity.
That's pretty cool. It's, as you say, so you kind of ticked the boxes and ended up still sort of somewhat empty from it. Mm-hmm. In ticking those boxes of life, what kind of things did you do? I know that you were saying to me before that, you worked in the pharmaceutical sales and things like that. Yeah. But obviously somewhere in all of that, you got very attached to what I'd say a Western lifestyle as well. Yeah, give me a bit on that.
Well, very much so, right? So I grew up playing baseball, very competitive, just mindset, nature. And honestly, when I got done playing ball, or when they told me you're done playing ball, you're not going to get paid to play any longer, I went through like this very depressive state. I just didn't know that is what I identified as. And I didn't know who I was or what the hell my purpose was after that. And so then I just took that mindset of goals and just seeking my own ambitions, I guess, and just translated that into money, and so which is a good thing and a bad thing. Looking back, I could have done it in a more healthy way, but I just started checking the boxes of, okay, I want to make this much money. I want to live here. I want to do these things. And it was just a matter of time. I was going to do it. If I made up my mind to do it, I was going to do it. And so, yeah, I landed the pharmaceutical gig in Dallas, Texas, relocated to Austin. Then they transferred me back to my hometown in Monroe, Louisiana, where I met who is now my ex-wife. And we built the big house and lived on 300 acres and all of the things outside looking in, one would say, oh man, they have it. It's perfect. They have that is the American dream. And that was the biggest deal. I think I'm very grateful for her too, for having the courage to say, hey man, this is not working out. And at the time, my ego, it just blew that up because I was like, oh no, now this illusion of perfection is about to be exposed, and so I had to move into this little apartment and was by myself. I drugged myself into these doctors' offices to sell pharmaceuticals. And like in the grand scheme of things, there are people who have mental health issues far worse than what I had it. So I'm not trying to paint this picture of just pity and despair, but I was not in a great place. I was just miserable, going through the motions every day, just existing. And I don't know what it was. I don't know why. I just finally said, okay, that's enough. Started reading books and climbing my way out of this mental fog that I was in.
Yeah, wow.
Sorry, I just threw a lot at you. I know you. I don't know.
No, it's cool. I wrote some notes in there as well. And that first one was, like back around baseball, being, competitive and also being goal driven. You identified at some point this is what you were going to do. You imagined just, I suppose, major leagues, and that was going to be your history, or what your legacy would be. And then from that, I like the bit where you said, they told me I wasn't going to be there anymore.
Yeah,
because I think that's always an interesting thing when destiny is not your own. It is, but it's not. And no doubt you could have probably gone to somewhere and coached or something like that. And
when you say that, I forgot. Yeah, that was an option. I wanted to stay around the game, and so I went and visited a few different places. Can you curse on this thing?
Yeah. Oh, yeah, sure. Yeah.
Some shithole in Arkansas. And I was just like, no.
I can see this for myself.
No, yeah, I can't do this.
Yeah.
So,
yeah, it's an interesting thing, isn't it? Like how, as you said, your identity was tied up in that. So then when that shifts, you got to do something and you got to choose some things. If it's been shifted for you, especially. And then the other thing I imagine, maybe not for you, but like for a lot of people, a lot of listeners, is they shift their own identity. It's not forced upon them. But as humans, we run for comfort so often. We run for what's easy. And in that, it would have been probably easier to go and coach baseball than it would have been to go, okay, well, I've got to start rapping or doing something else, taking a different. What was the turning point from the pharmaceutical, to the pharmaceuticals? Why pharmaceuticals? And, why not I get why they're not the baseball, but why pharmaceuticals? Because it was just a dollar value thing, or?
Right. So I had a couple of friends that had gotten those gigs right out of college. And so they're making six figures. They have company cars, and those companies are looking for athletes at that time. And I think they still do. Like teachers and athletes and military is who they were primarily trying to get. And why is that? Well, think about it. Military and athletes, they already have the mindset. They're going to do the thing, the majority of them. So they don't have to teach them. They can teach you the knowledge and the science behind the drugs, but they can't really teach or instill work ethic. And so that's why they focused on that. But it wasn't just like that was kind of hard for me too, because all of my other friends just went in, got the jobs, and it was it. But I got kind of laughed out of the room when I first showed up and went to wherever the hell, the Men's Warehouse, and got my first suit and showed up in this thing, man. And they just truly, they were kind of just like, oh, And I think I did at some point, my very first pharmaceutical interview, I stopped the interview. I said, okay, guys, clearly this is not going well, because they kept asking me questions that I don't have experience, dude. Like, I've been playing baseball for the last 20 years, like,
Yeah.
promise you I can do whatever you're asking me. And there was like, okay, well, like, show your work kind of thing. And there's like, they were like, yeah, that guy you passed in the hallway on the way in here, he has been selling vacuum cleaners for 15 years. Like, how are you going to compete with that? I'm like, I don't care what he's been selling. I'll do it better, but it didn't matter what I said. So I was just like, look, guys, I know this isn't going good. What advice do I need to know to get better? What do I need to do to get the experience? And so they told me, yeah, go sell office supplies, go sell copiers, go, vacuum cleaners door to door, sell some shit that's hard, and then come back. You will walk in here and we will hire you on the spot. So that's what I did. I moved to Dallas and started selling office supplies.
Yeah, right. Office supplies first. Yeah. That's fascinating. I'm a big fan of Zig Ziglar. And Zig Ziglar based himself in Dallas.
Listen to the books and read all of his books. Yeah, he's great.
Yeah, absolutely. Like, he goes way back in my history of self-development. And with it, of course, he was like sales 101. Like, that was his whole, how do you sell things? Interesting, you went into the office supplies part. I know a lot of people who got a massive learning or a massive education out of going and doing something with network marketing, so they'd go and do Amway, or they'd go and do one of those things, and where they would tie into a network that would have self-development attached to it. And because you'd get your ass kicked so often if you didn't grow as a person. And I suppose they imagined that's what would happen to you with doing, something else. Like they said, go and sell something door to door. Have you ever done door to door?
Well, it was business. It was B2B sales. So yeah, I was in and out of all of the office buildings. If you get on the North Tollway Express and you've from like Dallas to Plano, I've probably been inside of every one of those offices and knocked on their door.
Wow.
Yeah, that was my little territory.
Yeah, right. That's cool. Yeah. I did, and we're going to have a kind of a common synergy, I think, with something else we talked about. In the GFC, so the global financial crisis, which was 2008, 2009, something like that, I was doing for myself, designing houses for people, and work stopped. Like, it just stopped, I was fairly new in it, and it got down to a trickle. And so one of my friends said to me, he'd just taken on a role as a sales manager in a solar company and just selling solar to different houses. And so he went, you could come and work with us just on commission only. You could come and work with us, and we go to these different areas and we door knock. And we don't have leads. We're creating our lead, and then we'll do the sale if we get the sale. And he said, why don't you come and do that? And then you don't have to always be doing that. You can still do your design as your projects are rolling along, and you'll have a bit more time, but you still can make good money off each one. Like, the dollar value was high that we would make. And that was really my first experience of going door knocking. And I think I did it for maybe about 18 months and all.
It was a long time. It lasted longer than me.
Yeah, well, I don't know that I ever fell in love with it. I fell in love with parts of it. And certainly it builds your rapport skills. And, right from having doors closed in your face and dogs chasing you, right, the whole way. And yeah, so anyway, it was really great for that. And then I also discovered a lot of bits of Queensland that I would have never discovered before, because we'd drive to an area and then you'd see it. And so from a design point of view, it really spread my knowledge, because I'd always be reading the land and looking at what's happening in those places. What's the economy? What's it based on? Is it based on cattle? What is it based on? Or tourism? And kind of get a read on it so that I could build rapport with people. So for the people who love the land, I could talk about those things. So that was actually pretty interesting. Yeah. So then after you'd done that, you went and did pharmaceutical sales, and then, your life blew up. And when it blew up, getting yourself back on track, what were you reading? What were the books that you chose? Can you remember any of them? Yeah, that's probably right beside you.
Actually, they are. If I could show you, I'm looking at all of them. Yeah, I keep them very close by, and there's some that I go back to often. I would say I vividly remembered Man's Search for Meaning. Have you heard of that one?
No, Man's Search.
It was written by Viktor Frankl. He was a Holocaust survivor, and just put it into perspective. This guy is watching his family and friends go to the gas chamber, and he maintains the quote in the book that just stands out to me is the last of the human freedoms is that we have the ability to choose our own attitude in any given situation. And so here this guy is going through all that, and I'm going through my little self-pity thing. And that's when I started to wake up and say, oh shit, you don't have to feel this way. Like, this is a choice. You get to choose your perspective. You get to choose the outlook that is going to determine your attitude. And so that was one. Don Miguel Ruiz, The Four Agreements. Oh, he had another one too. I can't think of the name of it. It is The Mastery of Love. The Mastery of Love. That's the other one by Don Miguel Ruiz. And then Anthony DeMello wrote The Way to Love. I actually have this one within reach. It's a real little book. But you can see I've tabbed this thing out, man, and it's gotten well used. And then Awareness is another one by the same guy, same author, Don Miguel Ruiz. I'm sorry, Anthony DeMello.
Anthony DeMello. Yeah, my wife is actually currently one of her books, so she reads many books at once, but one of her ones is The Four Agreements that she's reading currently. Yeah. I haven't read it, so it's I put a big cross by it on my head.
For any new employee we had, they would have to read that book before they could start working.
I love that. And if they couldn't do that,
I'd say they got to read that book. It's a gift.
Yeah, it's a gift. You gave them a gift that's got real processional value. Yeah. And if they didn't get it, I suppose they didn't start working. And when I say didn't get it, if they didn't understand it, then maybe they're not the fit.
Yeah.
That's pretty cool. So then take me down the thing of your Instagram, holding a sheet of paper. Nobody ever sees who you are. Big hat on. And when I first looked at it, I'll give you my first impressions, but with something profound written on it, on that sheet of paper, something that stopped you in your tracks and you go, what's that about and why? And question it for your own life. And, you've got close to 100,000 people following that. So with that, there's a lot of people who obviously enjoy having their life stopped by the mystery character. Tell me about setting that up. And I know you told me a little bit before, but tell for the audience about setting that up.
Yes. So from the creative standpoint, I guess it would just be like steal wisely, because it wasn't my idea. I saw somebody else do the idea. It wasn't their thing, but I just saw a post that Gary Vee made on like a board, and I was like, oh, well, that's cool, because I'm already doing these journal entries and I write a quote at the top of it, and that's kind of my prompt. And then I'll journal about it and just explore my own mind and curiosity. And so then I started doing it, and I'm like, oh man, this is so stupid. This is cheesy. And I can remember one of the guys that sponsors the show now, Kerry Kelly from Kerry Kelly Bits and Spurs here in Weatherford, Texas. I just met him randomly one day. I didn't even know he knew who I was, but he's like, man, I really like those poster quotes that you do. Those are really cool and inspiring. And I was like, no way. You like, you know who I am. And you're like, and so that was like the confidence I kind of needed, or like, yes, keep doing it. Like the sign from the universe, like keep doing the thing. And so I used to just do them every Monday. I would just put one out every Monday morning, and then one thing led to another, and it just became like a daily thing now. So
it'd be a fantastic discipline, a bit like you said with the journaling, like that fantastic discipline of, for different people, their daily habits. And I'll ask you about that in a second. But just setting your mind for what you want or for what you want to give as much as anything. It's not what you want to get. It's about what you can give. And setting your mind to that. And then the platforms, like obviously something like Instagram gives you this amazing platform to influence a lot of people with a take it or leave it, For them, it's for them. If it's not, it's not. Yeah.
That's the way I had to the whole Converse Cowboy thing has been this platform for my own personal growth. And that's you put some journal entries out into the world, like you're gonna kind of worry, what are other people gonna think? But then I would like through that, I got to grow because I got to the point where I'm like, I'm okay. Like if someone doesn't align with it, that's fine. And for the ones that do, that's great, But I do those first thing in the morning, and I saw this quote the other day. It says, "Make before you manage." Make before you manage. And I thought that was really like, that's what I've been doing. I make something first thing in the morning before I manage anything else, before I open an email, before I manage my business. I'm creating something. I'm getting my mindset in line with where I want it to be. And it truly does help. And I'm always the first to say, I'm not a guru. The self-help industry makes me fucking nauseous because everybody thinks they have the answer and they want to sell you their 3-step program. I don't have the answer. I'm just on this journey and I'm sharing what I do and what works for me. And so I try to make that very clear. I don't ever want it to sound like I'm preaching or that I have figured out answers that other people are seeking. So.
Well, having listened to your podcast, having read, I don't know how many hundred of your posters, and having shared equally probably 100 or more of your posters just as a regular thing. Yeah, until one day I was sitting there and I read one. I had never even knew you had a podcast. I just would read them and I'd go, that's a little question for myself. What do I feel that? How's that? How does that affect my life? Like I just wrote down, make before you manage. And I've got one open on my phone, which is pay attention to who you're with when you're feeling your best. And I go, just stop and take that breath, ask myself that thing. And also what I do with that is I ask what, like I do my analytics is what makes me feel best about being with them. What is it?
That's great. Yeah.
Yeah. At what level am I playing when I feel my best? And so those things make a really big difference to just being able to go, okay, just stop. And it must take, I don't know, it takes a lot of effort, or whether it just takes a piece that you go, well, today I'm going to write this, because, there'd be lots of things you could write. Coming from the journaling. So a daily routine, and because you've got a big business as a real estate investor, as well as you've got a podcast, and I know what it takes to run a podcast, and then you're, keeping your social media piece, which is just you, but still takes an effort. As a daily routine, what do you do? I know you make before you manage. So
yeah. And that's changed over the years. In the early days, when I first started doing this creative thing, it was very hard because I very much would equate, is this whatever I'm doing right now going to make me money? And how efficiently can I do this thing to get the biggest ROI, right? And so when you start trying to do that in a creative world, that does not work.
Yeah.
You cannot put a number, you cannot put a monetary value on the time you're spending creating, because you may feel like you're wasting a full day, or I can't just keep these journals in front of on my desk. You may just feel like you're wasting pages, but truly you're not. That could be a whole podcast in itself, just like the creative mind. But so then those days I was waking up at 3:33 in the morning. I would journal a little bit. I would read. And then I was part of a running group. We'd go run at 5 a.m., anywhere from 5 to 10 miles. And I'd come back and I had already done more that day than most people would do all week, And so I'm telling you that not to brag on all the cool shit I do in the mornings, but to say that was a few years ago, and I would fall out of some of those habits and practices. And then I would start feeling anxious and anxieties. I'm like, oh no, what is this about? And I would journal, when was I feeling great? Those were the days I was feeling great. When I was presenting myself with challenges and struggles to, overcome proactively. But I found myself in this reactive state. So it was this roller coaster for a bit. And I think all of life is. That's why one of my hashtags is always, the journey is the destination. You are never going to be the thing, you're never going to be your best. Like we can always strive to be our best, but we're never going to be that thing. And it's like I'm cursed with ambition, but I've come to be okay with that, and just trying to balance between, because I fell off way on the other side. I got to live this apathetic lifestyle where nothing mattered. I didn't care about anything, and that's not any fun either.
Yeah. Yeah.
So somewhere in the middle lies gratitude. And that's what I've come to. That is like the superpower that every human has available to us. And so finding the balance between too much ambition and not enough, and being grateful for just the journey itself. So to get back to your answer now, my routine is I still wake up early. 4:44 now is my alarm clock.
I like the 3:33 and the 4:44. And I know there's going to be a reason for that, but we'll get to that.
And in the summertime, though, when it was warmer here, I have a cold plunge. I was doing that every day. It's tough right now, man. It's 20, 30 degrees in that garage. It's tough. But every day's different. So I may go ride horses in the morning right down the road with a good friend of mine, badass cutting horse trainer named Jesse Lennox. Ride with him. And he's one of those, like, to surround yourself with the people that make you feel your best. Like, he's one of those people, and we have very in-depth conversations, whether it be about horse training and horses or just life. And it's, very meditating in a way. But still journal every day. That happens 99.9% of every morning. That's going to be the first thing I do. And then read. I started getting back into reading. I will set a timer. So whatever it is, 10 minutes, 20 minutes. Otherwise, you kind of, as humans, to improve a habit, you have to first have a habit. You first have to do the thing, And so that's an easy way to structure it. It's like, okay, for 10 minutes, that's all you got to do. So now I know for 10 minutes, I'm going to do this versus, okay, I need to read today. And I'm looking at this book, like this one. I mean, that's a thick Robert Greene mastery. But I can remember, and I write the dates on the front of all these books. So you can see this one's 4/17/2019 is when I started reading this one. And that was the year after I was kind of out on my own after my divorce. And this was one of those that I would read, and just those practices that give you some nuggets, just to, because we're being conditioned.
No matter what it is. No matter what it is, we're being conditioned.
Yeah. Everybody's being conditioned. So I'm of the mindset, I want to condition my mind to the content I want to consume, the books. And like, I can't call Robert Greene, but maybe I can get him on my podcast. Maybe, but short of that, if I can't get him on my podcast, I can read his book, Yeah. And that's happened several times. I've had several best-selling authors on that. The War of Art was one of those books you asked about by Stephen Pressfield. And man, what a great soul he is. I had him on the podcast, and then I'm actually writing a book right now. But on the front end of writing that, I went and visited him in Malibu, and just for a day, and he opened his doors and his mind and everything. It was so cool. But without the Converse Cowboy, I don't think I would have been able to do that. So
let's segue to that, because how long have you been doing the Converse Cowboy as a podcast?
I think since 2019. So however many years that is.
Yeah, so just pre-COVID?
Yeah, it would have been the year of COVID, because I remember I started and then we had to just do the virtual thing for a while.
Okay. Yeah, cool.
Was that 2020?
2020 was COVID-19, because it started in 2019 and around the December. And then 2020, we pretty much, most of the world went into lockdown around February, March 2020.
Okay, so it would have been 2020 then. 2020 is when I started.
Yeah. I remember it so clearly, because in sort of like November, I booked a ticket to the US. No, I was planning booking a ticket to the US. COVID it had started to show, and I went ahead and still booked the ticket. And my friends were saying to me, "You're nuts. Why are you doing that?" And I went, "Well, I've checked with," and my wife said the same. I said, "I've checked with the insurance company, and if I get stuck, I'm covered. And so I think I'll be fine. I think I'll be, okay." And they're like, "Yeah, but you could get this thing." And I'm like, "Yeah, I could." I was going to Texas, was where I was headed. And so anyway, I booked this trip, and it was to do something with the Texas Society of Architects. And I didn't want to miss the opportunity, like it was like I'd been invited to do something, and I'm like, I want to do this. I said,
right.
And I did it. And when I got to the States, not really a big deal. When I was leaving the States, like 10, 15 days later, oh, that was a big deal. They were like at LAX, they were putting everybody who looked like they had any Asian influence in their blood in one queue. They were putting other people in other queues.
Really?
They were separating them all off. Things were sort of in the semi-lockdown sort of state or control state. And I'm going, this shit could be real. And the news was constantly doing things. And I'd been in El Paso as well. So I'd been in Austin and then flown up to El Paso with a really good friend of mine. And he's got his own private plane, so like little Cirrus aircraft. And so with him, we flew up there to El Paso, and another friend who's a really not well known, but really brilliant architectural photographer. And we went to the conference and stuff. And then, I kind of left the conference to get home. And I'm like, whoa, okay, I might not get home. And I got home, and that day I arrived home. So we lose a day to come back down under. And I went to an Elton John concert that night with my wife and kids. So it was one of those kind of moments. It's so clear in my mind. There was a guy sitting on the airport bus where I dropped the rental car off, got on there, and he looked like death, and he was hacking and coughing and all the rest. And I remember just pulling my sweater up over I didn't have a mask, just pulling my sweater up, my hoodie up over my nose, and just sitting there like this with my head down, really going, I don't want to breathe your shit. But that again is one of those things, about making choices. And I got home, and while I've been away, I'd met up with a couple of people, and I'd said to them, I used to do this thing where I would just go, I want to go and interview this architect so I could further my knowledge in design. And so I'd say, can I come into your office or into your studio? I'd love to do a little interview with you. God knows what I was going to do with the interviews. I was just going to collect them. And a guy called Matt Reisinger, who has the Build Show, I'd met Matt. He's a builder. And I met him, and I said, Matt, I'd really love the opportunity to interview you. And he's like, yeah, right. Okay, well, you've got a podcast or something, don't you? And I went, yeah, like this. And I'm thinking, I don't have a podcast. Anyway, but I had a few interviews. I could back myself up on that. And I got back to here, everything got locked down, and I went, maybe this is time to start the podcast. And then the doors that it's allowed me to open. Yeah. We wouldn't be talking if it wasn't for the podcast.
Right.
But, the doors that allows you to open, and the knowledge that I can get from myself, the gratitude I have for that. And then the fact that we can record a conversation, and that gives people an opportunity to take that and maybe help them in their lives, give them perspective. Yeah.
100%. I agree with that. I'm very much an introvert. I can relate to what you're saying, because if I'm out in public, I'm going to either like sit in a corner by myself, read a book. I'm not going to bother anybody. And at horse shows, especially, you see people all the time, and you just give them that wave and, hey, how you doing? That's as far as it goes, and the podcast is completely different. Like, you have this guest on, it's like this unwritten agreement, like, we're going to be here for an hour or whatever, no cell phones, we're going to talk, and you get to have an in-depth conversation. And that's something that I truly enjoy. And I was having some of those with like close friends and acquaintances, but not to the level, with the podcast. And then other people never got to hear them. They weren't recorded. So it's been really cool. I met a lot of good friends and developed a lot of cool relationships just through having my fiance now. I met her through the podcast. So I go, the doors it opens is just incredible. And the learning that you get for it, I often say to my wife and other people, like, if nobody listened, I already got such a feast. And it's not about just that. That's the thing.
I feel so grateful for the fact of the people that I can get to meet and what their perspectives bring to my life, and how I use them. On the point of the Converse Cowboy, when you started recording it, what did you do to get yourself set up as a podcaster? Like, what was that journey like? It's one thing to go and have some conversations and also realize the power of what that can do. But then, that whole back end piece that we all do, finding guests and all those things.
Yeah, for me, that was the Converse Cowboy. The idea sat in my brain for like 2 years before I did anything. And then a guy, I thought I wanted to learn about cameras, and I went and visited with him down in Austin. And at the end of the shoot, we're sitting around, we're smoking, and he's like, "Well, what's holding you back, man? Like, you keep talking about this thing. What's holding you back?" I was like, "Shit, man, I don't know." And a bunch of resistance. And Stephen Pressfield talks about resistance in the war of art with a capital R. And he's like, "Well, what's the next step?" And I was like, "Well, shit, I don't know. I guess I need to get some equipment." And he's like, "Okay, do that." And luckily, another guy I knew was running a podcast for somebody, and he was kind enough. He sent me an email with a list of all of the equipment they use, and it was the best of the best, And so the other thing that camera guy told me was, he said, "Can you, in reference to the resistance, he said, can you tell me what Joe Rogan's first 20 podcasts were like?" And I was like, "No." And he's like, "Exactly. Nobody's going to remember how you started this thing. Everybody puts so much pressure on themselves to begin something because they want it to be perfect. It's not going to be." And so that was kind of the push that got me started, and at least got my equipment ordered. And one thing led to another. It's like the law of attraction, whatever you place your focus and energy, those things just kind of come to you. And so a friend of mine in town had some experience with a camera, knew how to run it, and kind of wanted to do something with a podcast, but he didn't want to be the host because he already had one and he didn't like it. So I was like, great. So he came on board. It was very low budget. I don't even think I paid him anything. And another friend of mine really wasn't doing anything. He was in the military and home for some reason. And I rented an RV and we drove to Texas for a week. And I just reached out to people that I knew and people that they knew and lined up a week of interviews. And that's kind of how it started. And then after that little trip, I kind of got a little taste of it. And I was like, oh, man, I want to do this. So I hired a full-time camera crew, like legit deal. And we went back to Texas for another week, and all of like the big ranches throughout West Texas and Oklahoma, I did one with all of them. And yeah, it was a cool ride. And from there, about a year or so later, I don't know, it was probably 2 years later, that camera crew and I parted ways. And I was just kind of like, gosh, what am I going to do? I kept telling myself, you can't stop. You have to keep doing it no matter what it is. So I learned how to edit. I just do audio only now. And I learned how to edit and just to keep going and keep doing the thing. And so that's kind of where I'm at right now with it. And I've done some feature stories. I've done some projects, through the Converse Cowboy name, and really cool experiences. So
I love that. I love that. I love the simplicity of it as well. I just added YouTube to mine about, I don't know, a couple of months ago. And I don't know whether that changes much. It just costs me more to produce. But it's such a gift to get the conversations that I go, you know what? It's a small amount to pay for my own self-development. Yeah.
There's value in video for sure. I polled my audience, though, like, hey, are y'all listening to this thing? Are y'all watching this thing? And I don't know, 80% of them like, yeah, we turn it on, even if we're watching on YouTube, and we'll put it on the console and just listen.
Yeah.
So I think doing audio only is better than nothing. If anybody's listening to this, you can start there, and that's an easy way in. But I also do see the value of video.
Yeah. Yeah, I've got a few podcasts I've been on for other people where they had a high video production content, which I thought was pretty cool. And I started my whole one after watching the Chase Jarvis show. And he's a photographer, and of course he's got beautiful video for his podcast or his show. And that was one of my inspirations. And I went, that looks like a lot to do and a lot of things to manage. So how can I do it even more simply? And I tried a few different platforms and then ended up with Zoom. And another guy, Aaron Prince, who runs Designed podcast for the Architectural Record, I interviewed him and I said, so Aaron, you just run yours on Zoom? He's like, yeah, man, I keep it super simple. I don't do any video or don't release any video. I just run it on Zoom. And it's all about the conversation and the guest, and that's it. So, yeah, I was fascinated to hear, about doing it.
Yeah, and I put out some like high quality content on Instagram, Facebook, and it's kind of like a letdown. It just doesn't hit, like it doesn't matter the quality of the video, really. I mean, hell, cell phones are so good now. You can just record on that as long as you're doing something and getting it out with consistency. That's the secret I think most people miss. And that's probably why there's a statistic out there. I think 80% of the podcasts started in 2018 no longer exist. And since you have a podcast, it can be a full-time job. And
you can make it into one.
Yeah, you definitely can. And without the compensation of a full-time job.
Yeah. It'll just cost you. It'll cost you for that full-time job. Yeah, you're paying them. Exactly. One of the things that I do with mine is I record always in the morning. So and I have a lot of American guests for that reason. I like to record between 5 or starting anywhere from 5 a.m., 6 a.m. But I don't very often record past 6 a.m. as a start point because it means that I can still interact with the family before, like my daughter goes to school or any of those things. It means I can be up early. It gives me a purpose to jump out of bed and snap my brain into, our brains work in analytics in the morning and in creativity usually in the afternoon. So with that, I find it's really good. It is 7:09 a.m. So like I get to do this. I'm a bit, would you say, I'm extroverted, but I'm also like, enough ADHD that my brain will get really scattered quickly. And so by the afternoon, if I'm not in analytics, it changes that. So when I do them in the afternoon, I don't feel maybe quite as, that I get as much from them. And and I think it's my ability to absorb while I'm in analytics. Like I've got a couple of pages of notes already from us. And just that piece of little gems, little bits of understanding. And then in the afternoon, if I had to do it then who's doing my clients' work? The people that are paying me to work, who's doing their work if it's not me or it's not my team? And if it's not my team, then even if it's them, who's managing it? So that's my game on, that we've got those other hours for generating my projects for my clients. And I think that's the difference. So I go, this slots in. It's 1 or 2 mornings a week, depending on what I'm recording. I often record series. So I'll do a series and then dump them all at once, as opposed to just a daily or weekly, sorry. So I do those as well, which has built me some fantastic alliances, I would say, and like a podcast has sponsored the AIA Austin's Open Homes Tour now for over 4 years, where I talk to all the different architects and stuff. So just things like that. It's that's cool. And it builds such a big community as well, which I really love. On your podcast, my first one that I listened to was Times Ranch, and you're wearing their hat. And I really enjoyed that. I came from a clothing background. So, Amanda, you come across these guests like that. And there must be some, I don't want to say standout guests because they all will deliver something, but there's some guests that you just go, it was a light bulb changing moment for you. I had a guest on my podcast and he said, I said to him something about, you must have some wonderful projects, some great projects was the words. And he said to me, yeah, I do. And he goes, but it's not about projects. And then I kind of leaned right in on that and waiting for the thing. And he said, it's about people. And with great people, become great projects.
Mm-hmm.
And after being a designer, like doing building design for 20 years or something, when I finished the podcast, I jumped out of my chair and I ran upstairs and I said to my wife, damn, how can I have been in this business all this time and I'm still hunting for great projects instead of great people? It's just a golden shift. So things like that. You got any examples?
Yeah, that's beautiful. Gosh, man, from just guests that I've had on. I'll go back to my buddy Jesse Lennox. He has a line that says, just because you can doesn't mean you should.
Mm-hmm.
And that's probably one of the most listened to interviews, even folks that aren't in the horse world or performance horse world. That's you're going to learn something from that interview with him, and you're going to laugh a lot.
Right.
Because he's
going to go and listen to it.
Very, very funny guy.
And what a great, just because you can doesn't mean you should. That's meaningful in itself, isn't it? Like, it's really, people do things because they can instead of because they should or because of what it could do for them. And there's a balance there of discovery plus then also discipline, and that's the athlete, the discipline.
Yeah.
I got another one with that is, if you could have a guest out of everybody that you've ever heard or come across, who would you have and why?
Probably Matthew McConaughey. I was trying to think of somebody that wasn't living anymore I would like to interview Elvis. That would be a cool one to sit down with.
Yeah.
Just to know how he handles it. We all have expectations, and then other people have expectations of whatever success you've had, but he was like on this complete other level. So yeah, I'd like to sit down with Elvis. Yeah,
that'd be a great pick. It would be great to listen to as well. Yeah, like I'm just thinking, like his whole upbringing, his whole journey. Have you been to Graceland?
I have not. No.
I'll put that on your list. That's worth doing. Worth doing. Yeah. I've been a couple of times, and it's an Elvis shrine, and there is so much to be taken from it because it's kind of stopped in a moment, and that moment is when he died. Then they just kind of curated it for that moment, and that's it. Yeah, cleaned the kitchen bench and put the glassware away or whatever. It is as it was, and it still operates as a house as well. Like, you don't go upstairs, but you go downstairs, and he's got a squash courts and squash court, things like that. You also interview quite a few. Matthew McConaughey, by the way, I reckon that would be a great interview as well, especially if you've read his book Green Lights.
Oh yeah. Yeah, and I was looking for that book like 15 years ago. I wanted, I remember walking through the bookstore trying to find his biography, and it wasn't in existence yet. And that's not a biography anymore, but
yeah, I think it was a fabulous book. It was a really good book. So tell me, can I ask about your real estate investing and your real estate? We had a little chat about it, but why real estate and why it works as a vehicle for you? So
I just happen to have this book right here. This is what started it.
Oh, Rich Dad, Poor Dad. Yeah, absolutely.
That's one it just, and that book doesn't tell you how to buy real estate. It doesn't gives you concepts, but it doesn't give you context. And but it changed my mindset from thinking I had to have a job and all of these things. And so pharmaceuticals is what I was doing at the time. And it's very volatile, people are getting laid off left and right. And so I asked myself, like, what can I do while I'm still doing this pharma gig and make money, but not necessarily have to be there to do it? And about that time is when I read that book, and it just fit. I was always into the design. I wanted to be in construction in some way, but I didn't have a construction degree. But this allowed me to do it without having to do that because I was doing it for myself. So the first 2 houses I've ever bought, I did all the work myself, and I wanted to put myself through that and learn how to do it and what it takes. And from that, the biggest lesson I learned was I never want to have to pick up a fucking drill or hammer again. My company car was a Ford Taurus, and I remember having tools and paint cans all in the back seat and trunk. And if I wasn't there, I wasn't making money. Like the house wasn't getting done. So I learned from there, like, okay, leverage your time. You pay somebody else to do it. They're going to do it faster. They're going to do it right. They're going to be liable for it, and so, and so why real estate, the other benefits, tax benefits, appreciation, cash flow, there's a number of other things that go into it that just make sense to me. I feel like not that I'm doing something wrong, but I'm like, guys, is this legal? Like to do this, and the way, the model and business model that we have and the way we acquire assets, and like, there's no limit to it. That's the other reason I like it. You're capped when you're selling anything, but with real estate, man, really infinite, and the returns are infinite. And so it just made sense to me.
Yeah. Okay.
And I've learned a whole bunch more. And so from that rich dad, I went and I did one of his courses. You go to the free weekend, and then they sell you on the $500 weekend. You go to that one, and it psychologically, they just keep getting you to buy in more and more. And so at the $500 weekend, they sell you on the big one. And I had a decision to make that night. It was like $30,000 to do the one I wanted to do. It was a year-long, like, mastermind, all about real estate investing. And so I was like, man, I didn't have $30,000 to throw at that. And so I just, I did that. Like, I don't know what made me decide to do it, but it's like, man, you came this far. This is the thing you want to do. They have the answers you're looking for, because that's the thing. Nobody around in my little inner circle at that time had the answers I was looking for. Banks don't tell you any of this shit. And I remember after I learned all these things, I went back to some of those same bankers and I'm like, hey, can we do this, this, and this? And they're like, oh, yeah. I'm like, well, why the fuck didn't you tell me that? And so they're like, oh, we didn't know that's what you wanted to do. So it was a year long. I still use those practices and principles that I learned there. Some of them have evolved, implemented my own systems. But yeah, it's just like, if I have any success, it's because I've stood on the shoulders of giants. I've just learned from others. Yeah. So
another great saying. Yeah, that's fascinating. As you say, nobody teaches. Well, people do teach it, like that Napoleon Hill thing. They do teach it. There is a vehicle that you can go out there and get educated in it. And, you've built a huge portfolio. And one of the things that I wrote down then was, that leverage piece, but with the cash flow, like you're spread wide. So, you were saying to me earlier, you've got, 100 plus properties. So there is always rent coming from somewhere. And when there's always rent coming from somewhere, you've got width in your game. So if 2 houses are empty, it's just a matter of getting them rented. How much of that company do you manage yourself, and how much do you have? How many team do you have that help all that happen? Because there's a lot going on.
Yeah, I'll answer that, but there's something I'll circle it. I'll tie this back to something you said earlier. I always tell people, it's easier to own 50 houses than it is to own 2 houses. Because you can now afford to pay a handyman or maintenance guy. You can now afford to pay the property manager. So now it's not a job. I didn't sign up for a job. I don't want a job. That's not what I want. And so I've gotten to this level now. It's like, to scale. I was talking to a friend of mine who has 200 plus employees. He owns Serve Pros, which is a big restoration company. I don't know if you're familiar with that, in the DFW area. No. And just to, like, he's the guy, man, for me that I have within my Rolodex to call and level up, because he's talking about hiring. He's telling me about all these people that he hired, and they're people that I know make well over 6 figures, and he's hiring a lot of them.
A bunch of them. Yeah.
I'm like, dude, how does that make sense? He's like, it's the only way to scale. You got to hire good people. And they will pay you back. And I was like, oh, dude, that's the same thing I say to people about houses. But what you're telling me is applying to me now. Like, I need to level up and hire better people, more qualified people. Not that people that we have right now aren't great. They are. But to take it to another level, there's this other upper echelon of, caliber that I'm looking for. And so to answer your question, we have full-time, it's like a dozen or so between. Yeah. And then we also have subs that are almost like full-time employees, and there's a few dozen of those. And so we have our own roofing company. So we do we do a lot of the stuff in-house, but yeah, it's more like the people I'm talking about more from like a marketing standpoint, web designers, stuff like that to level up is kind of where the next step is.
Yeah,
I
right.
feel like I've pushed it off and gotten by with what we have, but I want to,
You've got another step there that you're going to take. Yeah.
yeah. And talking with those guys like my buddy, I'm just telling you about with the Surf Pros, like it's just inspiring and encouraging to hear because he's on a whole nother level. When I think I'm hot shit, I either need to remind myself through a conversation like, oh yeah, you're not hot shit.
Yeah. But that's great as well, isn't it? Because what you're doing is you're creating that Napoleon Hill mastermind effect, with those people where your mind and their mind grows your mind and grows the common knowledge as well. I'm sure he sits and goes, damn, Mike's got that shit worked out. He doesn't have $1 million wage bill every month or whatever it is, Yeah.
Yeah. Outside looking in, you always want to trade places with somebody else too.
Yeah, you do.
Yeah, Napoleon Hill, that's another one, man. It's actually sitting right here on my desk. That's a very powerful book and one that I read early on. And I think I was already doing some of those things unknowingly, law of attraction and
just by being focused and being aware and
and intentional.
Yeah, without a doubt. Some of the other people you've had on your podcast are musicians as well. Obviously music's close to your heart, and I know you play as well.
Oh man, to say that is a stretch. I try. Yes. But it's very cool to sit down with those folks and there again, to see what they do, their craft. I've seen some of the best in the world and in the same room with me, actually playing my guitar, and just fascinates me, man. Fascinates me. I envy and most of those folks have done it from a very young age. And I envy anybody that has found their thing, their passion at a young age, and to see what is possible. It's incredible.
Yeah, 100%. I'm the same. Like, I think, when you see somebody who it's an extension of who they are. It's just who they've grown to be and come and keep going. And obviously there's music, there's also horses. So you've got horses, you ride a lot. What is it about horses?
Man, I think I've always just been drawn to them, like even from when I was a kid, I would always just I actually remember begging my parents for a horse, and thank God they didn't buy me one because my parents are not horse people. They don't know. I would have been hurt or been in the hospital. The horses found me when they were supposed to find me, I guess is the best way to say it. And that was probably about 12 years ago. And just some friends of mine were full-time cowboys and working on a ranch, and they were team ropers. And that's kind of was my introduction. And then I'm going to answer your question. I'm just getting.
Oh, no, it's good. I love this background.
I outgrew like their level of horsemanship. And so I started looking for more answers because I would ask stuff and they wouldn't know. And so then if you want to know anything about horses, you need to come to Texas. So I found a guy over here, an older guy. He owned a horse called Playgun, and he was very willing with his time, and just he's not living anymore, but just the mindset, the psychology of a horse, I think is what draws me to it. And to see there again, like the guys that do it at the highest level. No, horses can't speak verbally, but they are having a conversation every time they're on them, and it's like they can read them. They can manipulate is going to be the best word. It sounds terrible, but they can manipulate these horses in such a way that it's like magic, man. It's so crazy. And so I just have a very small, I understand all of the concepts, but timing and feel are such a big part of that those guys do it every day, all day, so there's no catching up for me. But yeah, just before we started this interview, I just got off of one and came in here. But yeah, I just about every day I'm on a horse.
Nice. Yeah, that's really cool. And that's a real, I imagine, an incredible grounding connection as much as anything else.
Truly is. Yeah. Everything just all the distractions just kind of seem to fade, and my phone goes in do not disturb. I love that feature. And it's me and the horse.
Yeah. That's
Yeah.
amazing.
You ride? Do you ride horses, or have you ever been around them?
No, I have ridden. I used to steal them when I was a kid. I lived in close to a town, like very close to a town, like a mile away, and but I lived in the country in the hills, and we had like a creek in our backyard and stuff. But we had farms surrounding all of us, and there used to be, probably a few hundred meters down the road, there was the last bus stop up this hill, and we used to have paddocks that kind of ran from there for miles and miles. And there would be people who adjusted their horses there. And we used to call them the horse girls, because they were generally girls who their parents would buy them a horse and it'd have to be adjusted somewhere. And they would either arrive by bus after school or whatever. Anyway, so those horses would be in a couple of big paddocks. And my best buddy, who just happened to live next door, and I decided that we should learn to ride, not with any instruction, but, Indians rode with bareback, so we could do it. And so we would go up there sometimes, and we'd make sure, that there was nobody around, and then we'd go and catch a horse. So catch a horse, and then we'd bridle it. We were smart enough to do that. And then we'd jump on and get ourselves and often just walk them around. Like it was sometimes, I don't ever really remember galloping them around in the paddocks, maybe a canter or something, but that's how we learned. And so I used to do that more often than probably should have. It was a great escape. And then, over the years, I've ridden some at different times. And I have a friend, Maggie, who is in the States, and she's a vet, and she works between Texas and Montana. And I was chatting to her just recently, and she said, when you come out here, I want to take you on a horse trek. I'm like, I don't know my ass would handle a horse trek. She's like, no, I want to put you on the back of a horse, and we'll go for a couple of days just riding. I'm like, well, I have to do that so I can sit still all the way home on the plane. But it's something that I'd like to do again. And my wife rides, and she can ride, and my eldest daughter can as well. So, I've been around, but not intimately around them to really, I wouldn't say that I'm a rider of any kind. I'm a hop on and hope I don't fall off guy. I fancy myself as being more than that, but that's just in my mind. Yeah. It's not real.
The other thing I think that draws me to horses is they don't lie. They only tell the truth, and they know, they can sense if whatever you're feeling when you're on top. If you're getting ready to go show a horse and you're feeling anxious, they're going to feel it. They'll, as the old saying goes, a horse can feel a fly on its ass in a windstorm.
Yeah, right.
Very sensitive. Very sensitive.
And so for that reason, it's, again, the mindfulness of it, of connecting or disconnecting and reconnecting.
Well said.
Yeah, that they're certainly a flight animal, and they can be super skittish, but then they also are a very curious animal. They actually would enjoy being around people and whatever's happening with people, like they're not too foreign from that. I've got friends who live out in the country with horses and stuff, and they have worked all around the world with horses. One of my friends, Primrose, she's an interior designer. She has worked all over the world with horses and stuff. And other friends of mine, quarter horses, those kind of things. There's a lot in the horse world that's pretty fascinating. I've got a last question for you. So I have a thing that I call the emotional floor plan. And because you're a real estate investor, and because you've lived in a few houses, I'm sure, I want to just run you through this one little piece of this. And the idea of an emotional floor plan is, if we look at architecture and we say, primarily it's shelter. So if we get back to the fundamentals, human need for shelter and protection. So primarily it's shelter, and it protects you from the elements, and it protects you from predators, would be the main scheme of what it's about. And that shifts our sympathetic nervous system at some point. And then we layer that with, ego and our perceived need beyond those needs, our perceived need. What we deserve would be another one. I deserve that because of the hard work I've done. But when I get to this other piece of it, it's like, architecture is this ability to ideally look at the landscape and understand it. And I do a thing which I call land whispering with that, which is reading the landscape as well as energetically feeling the landscape. And then I have this other thing that I do with my clients called an emotional floor plan. And each home has different layers of spaces for different purposes. It's not just one room anymore. We have bathrooms, we have kitchens, we have all these different pieces. Okay, so then the next question would be, who does it allow you to be when you're at peace? And I think you kind of answered that, but who does it allow you to be for others when you're at peace?
Oh, it's a good question. I would hope that it allows me to be me, because it, again, like I'm just here, like I said, I'm an introvert, and I would much rather just be sitting by myself reading a book than. So I guess it lets me be me, and it may sound selfish, but it's also a benefit to others too. If my mind's clear and settled and still, and then I can go out into the world and be the best version of me.
And with that desk, if you were like creating yourself a new home, what are the other attributes that having, obviously the desk is an anchor and it's a story, like, you know what I mean? It's a deep story. It's something you've carried with you as such because it's been a part of the journey. The rest of the room, what else does it have that you would replicate if you were building yourself a new home?
It's a good question. So this is my fiance's house I'm in now, but I just brought this desk from my house in Louisiana here, and that was just a small room, man. It was just, I had a bookshelf that was the length of the wall, and there were books behind me. And then all of my like vision boards and stuff like that were on the walls. Yeah, I don't know that I would need anything else. I can't think of anything.
Yeah. This is the thing that when we're looking at a home, and you go, I don't know that I would need anything else. And instead of overblowing it, it's like, this is what I need. This is enough. And that enoughness.
It's very simplistic. I'm just trying to think of why is this my favorite place? Like, I have everything that I want and need right here. I don't know. Am I missing something? I feel like it's a loaded question.
No, definitely not. It's not a loaded question. It's like, I find it fascinating. I will ask the question of so many people, probably 30% of people tell me it's not in their home. And I'm usually talking to a design community. When I ask my clients, it will be, about their home. What is it? What does it make them feel? Where is that? And we would go through that room by room. So I'd go, okay, so we know that for you to be the best you. So what I know from now is I know these other things that matter to you as well. But this first one in your home is somewhere where you can be kind of self-contained and not interrupted, where you can drop the levels of who you are down to being the most authentic you. You can follow your disciplines. You can set up your day, from as you said, writing, reading, the creative side of you operates in that space. And there's probably a fair amount of, and we'd explore this, but control that you can give that space, which means that it's safe to be at that really base level. And if we designed you a house that was where you didn't have that space, it would never allow you to be you. And you would have to find another space for it. So it'd be a critical key component to it. If you'd said to me, well, out the window, there's this amazing view, and I don't know that I could operate in a room without a view, then that would be a key critical component. But we would go through every room in the house and find out its meaning for you. And then, like with your fiance, we would do exactly the same thing. We would go through every room in the house of a home and work out your needs separately, and then we'd work them out together. And then, how would the architecture need to respond to that? How much sky would you need to see? How much, confusion would you want to see versus simplicity? When's a long view there? When's a short view there? When do you feel hugged? When do you feel expansive? All those pieces that make up the person you are. Do you play your guitar in that room?
Yeah, that's right here.
Yeah. Cool. Yeah. So again, that's your creativity part of it, and just those things. So it's more about just understanding people and then understanding how architecture can best respond to those people and give them a better environment to create a better life.
Yeah, dude, that's beautiful, man. We're actually going to build like a barn and a barn dominium, and then after that's going to be the house. So that's all very savvy insights.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, at some time, give me a yell and I'll take you through that process. When you're in the process, I'll take you through it and give you. I've got a bunch of tools for playing around with that. I'll give you those, and you can have a little play, and we can just talk it through and just see if it makes your home and your compound a better place. A better space.
I wonder how many people, and you probably know a statistic on that, but I wonder how many people don't think about that, building their home in that way.
Yeah, a lot. A lot of architects will think around the positioning of the home. So I say to my clients, and when I speak on these subjects, but like the number one thing is the land. They're not making any more of it. We're the stewards of it. We owe it. Our gratitude owes that land the best that we can do, because whatever we do, we're going to screw with it. We're going to build on it. It wasn't built on before. We're going to muck with it. So A, do the best job, but B, understand it and feel for its energy. You're a guy who lives on your feet. Goes on land a lot. We just talked about horses and the feeling and all the rest. A horse walks across a piece of land. It's probably more intuitive than either of us. And it knows whether it feels it's good or bad. It feels the energy of the space, and it feels the energy of the earth. So the first thing is wherever you build and whatever you plan is, what is the functional orientation? Where's the wind? Where's the light? Where's the noise coming from? What are those things? If you're doing a barn, is it going to be double-ended? Is it going to blow air through it? Or is it going to have air blowing on one side of it? What's it going to do? What's the dynamic going to be? Where's the sun going to come up? What's going to overheat? What's going to underheat? Where's my cool air? Where's my hot air? Where's my sunlight coming in? Because that will refresh and clean it, sanitize it. It'll do all those things. Where's the noise going to come from? What will those things do? So number one, the land. But then feeling it energetically, you don't necessarily build the space or the house or where you're going to be on the best energetic land. We want to keep that stuff. That shit's golden. So we want that stuff to be adjacent to it. We don't want to ruin what is already got the best feel, that already does that thing. So adjacency to that is really important. And different pieces of land and the energy that they give out will shift your emotions really easily. So even being able to see it or go to it would be a great example. And then beyond that, then the next thing is there any regulations we have to comply to? You're in the real estate game. As an investor, your money's best spent on something that returns on the investment, not fighting regulations and rules. How do I play within the rules to get the best outcome and my money gets spent in the best way? So that's that land sort of side of it. And then playing to the rules and our budgets and making sure that we're creating enough of our dream, but then putting it into the right parts. What's the important parts? Having a great big laundry might be nice, but a better mudroom might be better. I don't know. Where's the money going to go? How do we divvy it up? Because there's a finite amount of money. And if there isn't a finite amount of money, then it gets even harder to make your decisions. It's better to put a definition around it and go, okay, that's what it's worth to me. Let's chop that up. Whether that's what you spend or not doesn't matter. It's just chop it up. Give yourself some boundaries. And then finally, you're going to, the third thing is the client. And they're going to be the most important thing. But we build the shelter or the need, like the barn or whatever it is, we build it for a purpose. And that purpose has to emotionally feel right rather than just functionally feel right. You should be able to get function right, but how do we emotionally make it feel right? So taking the client and their dreams and wishes, as a designer, nobody employs me because everybody employs me because I can design, but nobody employs me for that reason. They employ me as a step to getting to the dream they have. And they employ the builder as a step to getting to the dream they have. You have a real estate portfolio, a massive one, and you don't employ anybody other than they assist you to keep growing that dream and expanding and doing what you're doing or managing it or leveraging your time. So they might be wonderful people and all the rest, and you get a whole lot of extra from that. It's the thing is you have a dream, and with that dream, we need to be a foundation point of that dream that takes you forward.
So that's where it comes from. And then giving that energetic understanding, some people brush right over them, never even consider it. But you're a guy who sits with your own thoughts and is happy to educate yourself. And I find that most people never would look at what the emotion is that each piece evokes and when and why. When does it evoke it and why? Like a bathroom with, a shower and all that. That for one person could just be getting ready, getting out the door, getting functional, Another person, it's their sanctuary, it's their retreat, it's washing away their worries, it's giving them their creative space, it's a whole lot of other things. So where does the importance sit? Yeah. So
that's cool stuff, man. I'm glad. I'm glad to know that now.
Yeah, it'll give you a whole lot of perspective to play with, and creating the dream, but with purpose from the emotional sense. Let's say not a lot of people. Usually, when I'm introducing it, it's a fairly new concept. They may have touched on it in a point, but not in a whole structure.
Yeah, that's cool. That is cool.
I want to thank you so much for your time, your honesty, your generosity, your constant posts on Instagram, also your podcast, which I encourage all my listeners to reach out to and have a listen. There is so much wisdom and there are so many great stories where people open their heart to you and you open your heart to them and you can have a conversation that's meaningful and everybody gets to grow from. So,
thank you very much. It's been a pleasure, my friend.
Yeah.
Yes, sir.
Likewise. Absolute pleasure.
Yes, sir. We'll see you.
Thank you for tuning into our conversation. I hope it left you both informed and inspired. Don't forget to subscribe wherever you listen. And please don't hesitate to share your design thoughts with me. It's always a joy to hear from you. If you're like me and crave a deeper dive into design thinking, coupled with a love for travel and adventure, consider one of my architectural adventures. Join me and some of my wonderful design friends and embark on a journey of a lifetime. Apply for an unforgettable design experience at adrianramsey.com. With our clients spanning the globe, I firmly believe behind every great project are great people. If you're a great person and seeking to turn your dream into a reality, I'd be honored to design your home with you. Why not join the ranks of our exceptional clients and let's make your heart sing? Reach out to me at studio@ardesignhouse.com. That's studio@ardesignhouse.com, and let's get a conversation going and make your heart sing.